So let's talk about the grind set, because someone has been on a grind. And that grind has been George Galloway. Now, George, I was corrected this morning, is a Scot.
Yes.
Damn dirty Scot. But
Don't look at me while
you're a Scot, aren't you?
You've got some Scot in you too.
But
Yeah,
his
about
his mother is a Mick.
Oh my, just like you.
Okay. So anyway, so that's nothing wrong with that necessarily. But both of his parents are commies, and so they raised up a beautiful boy, and he has gone on to run in the election in Rochdale. Here is the ONS data for Rochdale, if you're interested. The constituency is more focused on not on this part, which is like 89% white British. It's over here, where it's more like 20, 15.
Wow, that's quite low, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of variation there. It's basically sort of ghettoized.
We've got to remember as well, with every single day, these figures become more and more out of date.
Yeah. So there's basically two nations in Rochdale. There's the center of town and then the countryside. So that's the constituency. And he ran, and the news is he won.
Don't sound too happy about it.
Well, I'm surprised.
By a decent margin as well.
I'm quite surprised he won as well. I thought it would be Labour winning, to be honest.
So the Workers' Party, George Galloway over here, he's got 39.7%. Now, for those who might, in the European continent, this is really rare because we are first past the post. So this never happens. And then he ran at a by-election and has done it.
And he got double the votes of the next best person as well.
And yes, the Workers' Party is what it sounds like, by the way, just to be clear.
So the next guy was independent. He was basically like, I'll fix the potholes and open the fridge. And he got 21%.
Open the fridge?
Yep, for all the boys. And then the next people, as you can see here, they don't even get portraits for some reason.
Because nobody cares.
They've been unpersoned.
Not even the lonely people that are Wikipedia editors bothered to give this man here an image.
He's so transparent. It's rare for a politician.
But the big story being, of course, you can see
That
here,
joke of the day.
12% for the Conservatives and 7% for Labour there. But not only is it a massive drop-off for them, we'll get to Reform later and their problems, but just nobody turned up. I mean, genuinely, nobody gave a toss.
It's also worth mentioning as well, the second person was an independent.
Yeah.
Which is very rare, that they get 20% of the vote.
So in a by-election, you expect there to be a lower turnout. There was. It's about 40%, according to this. But the big story being, not only is George Galloway won, which we're going to talk about him in a minute in detail, of course, because he's a hell of a character for people who don't know. If nothing else, let's try and be neutral about that. But then you've got the independent, and then you've got the establishment here, the two main parties, who managed to muster, in their infinite wisdom, bugger all, about 5,000 votes in a constituency of 75,000 people who could vote, roughly. About 8% of the public in this place bothered to vote for the establishment. That's how popular they are. That's amazing.
It's a little bit of a silver lining, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah. I mean, a bunch of the establishment, well, not a bunch of the public, also decided to vote for George Galloway. Which,
That's a black cloud to that silver lining.
There's a whole other circumstance. And there's some weirdness going on, of course, because there was an election in 2019, and as you can see, there was pretty normal stuff going on there. We'll talk about those turnouts in a bit. But this is a by-election, so of course the Monster Raving Lunar Party turned up, etc. 3 independents there. One of those independents was campaigning on, hey, you remember how Rochdale is famous for grooming gangs? Maybe we should stop that. Didn't get that much, which is very annoying, but there we are. So that's the results, just to lay out. That's the figures. Okay. Now we're going to get to George. Now there are many people I don't know, or I assume won't know George. George is a funny man. He likes to be about as extreme as you can in a lot of circumstances. Here he is, hugging with the leader of Hamas at the time this was taken, before the newest part of the conflict, of course.
Gets the nickname Gaza Galloway for good reason, doesn't he?
Yeah. Here as well, this is footage of him in, Iraq, meeting with Saddam Hussein and his cabinet to discuss various things, and he was a massive advocate against the war, which is one thing, and then he also did a lot of supporting of Saddam Hussein, which is another thing at that time period.
Wasn't Hussein a socialist?
He was a Ba'athist, which
is a particular form of it.
It's Arab fascism, so yes.
Yeah, there you
go. There's that, which is another thing. And most people, when they talk about George, will literally sort of leave it at this, where he's a bad guy, he meets with bad people, and that's the end of the discussion, which I can find sympathy with. But there's more to George, of course, than this. And his history is amazing, if nothing else, if not just because of what the hell am I looking at currently. Like, sincerely, what the bugger? It's just weird. So, real quick, down memory lane.
What did they talk about? What was the conversation going on there?
I don't know the specifics actually, but it's not that he was paid in oil. If we can make that perfectly clear, because he ended up going before the Supreme, what is it, the Senate to argue about this, and it was just bollocks. So there's that. But George's history. Now, as I mentioned, George raised by Scott and Mick, both Marxists though. That's the important point, of course. But him being Scottish and being raised in that environment, of course, being a Marxist, they're very anti-English. Well, he joined the Labour Party at 13.
Off to a bad start.
Yeah, you're not actually allowed to do that. I mean, I know the Labour Party are all groomers, but yeah, you're meant to start at 50.
Can you legally say that?
What, the Labour Party are all groomers? Yeah, I can say that. That's
I respect it.
Can't slander a party, so we can say whatever we want.
That's true, actually.
The party itself touches kids. Literally, I can do what I want. So there's that. But anyway, he joins the party at 13, and then he becomes an MP at 33. So, rising star. Goes on to be an MP for quite a while. Talks about how he supported the Soviet Union throughout all of that in a few interviews, so that's something.
Good judgment.
Yep. Typical Scottish Marxist, so there's that.
Supports all the bad guys.
But he has a lifelong reputation and an instinct, as he puts it himself, to support armed revolution where there is no alternative. Debating about when there's no alternative, of course.
That's an important caveat there, isn't it? Is no alternative.
Yeah. People will disagree when that's the case. But the point being, he's a pretty serious guy. Now, I don't agree with him, obviously. His political worldview is something I despise. But that's him. He's a Celtic Marxist who ended up becoming a member of parliament and used his time to orchestrate meetings and friendships with basically any enemy of the English by the looks of it, or whatever perceived enemy of the English he could find. For what reason, I'm not really sure. He argues himself that it's anti-colonialism, so there's, that's his viewpoint. So there's that. He then ended up getting kicked out of the Labour Party because, he kind of considered them all Zionists, which, okay. He founded,
not unheard of, is it, in the Labour Party?
Yeah. He founded his own party called Respect. Now, Respect are really Islamo-Labour. Islamo-socialist, I think was the term.
Islamophilic?
Yeah.
It's the crossover nobody wanted.
But it's literally socialist leftism and I love Islam. And it's a really weird mix, one that wouldn't make sense anywhere except the West. And so that's what he did.
Can you just do something for me very quickly? Just deputy on there. There's a blue name, Chris Williamson. Just hover over that for me.
That's not our Chris Williamson.
Not that one. All right.
Not modern wisdom.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. But he went on to found the Respect Party, as you can see here, and became an MP under that by running in various Islamic city centres, is how I'm going to put it, and was an MP for a while until 2016, at which point he was out of there. He was ousted by Naz Shah.
Oof. It's got a sting.
Also an Islamo leftist who's most well known for saying that the grooming gangs should shut their mouths. So
Well, it's the people complaining about them rather than the grooming gangs themselves.
Right.
But
yeah, she retweeted Owen Jones to be clear
a
about that.
parody Owen Jones account.
Yeah, Owen Jones would never tweet that. Anyway, so there's that, and then ever since he's been trying to get back into politics. So it's been about 8 years, right? And that's his travel. And you may remember we spoke about him before because he ran in Batley and Spen, a place you don't care about.
Well, you should care about, because that was where the teacher got driven out of the school, right? Unless I'm stealing your thunder here, I don't know if you're getting onto that.
Exactly, but the story was suppressed. It was something the British elite didn't want to speak about, and don't mention it. Because as you can see here, this is central Batley, where it gets as high. I think that was 88% Muslim in a minute. Jesus, 89.
89.
So he's got a particular constituency that he likes to go for.
Yeah, that's his target audience.
That is ridiculous.
91%.
How Islamic that is. Oh.
So that's Batley. And Batley is famous because it had a teacher, I believe if I get this correct, showed an image of Muhammad to make the point about censorship and what's allowed in religions. And as a result, is still fearing for his life living in hiding.
This is almost 3 years to the day, I heard.
So over 3 years, he's still living in hiding. Now, George ran here because of, that. Literally, this is his butter and bread to try and win.
What was the campaign promise? Don't worry, lads, we'll track him down.
Sadly, not sadly, but thankfully not. But there wasn't really much going on in that election. It was weird. It was unusual. Everyone was like, is George actually going to win and get back into Parliament and do his really weird worldview and stuff? But what happened is that the main people who stole the show were the Labour Party, because they ran anti-Hindu leaflets, which So this is
Why does this need to be an issue in England?
Boris Johnson has met Modi, and the Labour Party printed these to give to everyone in the town to be like, look, he supports Modi, vote Labour.
Silent on human rights abuses in Kashmir. It's almost like we're not in any way involved.
Yeah.
Hate to defend Boris Johnson, but
But it was a nice view into the future of British politics, wasn't it? This is how things will be discussed in these areas. Foreign bollocks. And he ran, and he came third. So as you can see here, The Guardian was reporting at the time, Muslim voters feel unprecedented discontent with the Labour Party. And this was, of course, before the war in Palestine. So George came third on 22% of the vote in this place. And now there's been a war in Palestine, he ran in Rochdale. Getting back to Rochdale here. This might explain a thing or two as to how he managed to get that percentage and those number of votes. But there's a bigger story here, and one that I think will probably be ignored if we don't go over it. Because you can see in this previous election, there's 14,800 people and 3,800 that voted for the Conservatives and the Brexit Party. Now, the Conservatives, of course, not really right-wing in the slightest, but at that time, it was perceived that Boris Johnson was a patriot and going to do the right thing and get Brexit done.
Before he liberalised our immigration laws even further.
Stabbed the country in the back, yeah.
So I think we can sort of accurately say that there's about, what is that? About 18,000 right-wing potential voters there. Maybe a little bit lower because the Tory boys need to execute them from the political environment. Not literally.
Good save.
So they exist. There's that block, and there's about 75,000 people who have the vote in the Rochdale constituency. So when you look at these numbers, it gets rather odd because, of course, if about 17,000 right-wingers had come out and voted for a single right-wing party, they would have won by a lot, and they didn't because they're not interested in voting. Because why would you? Look at the state of the British political system.
And the party that's positioning itself as an alternative to the Conservatives, that being Reform, did not get a particularly... They got less of a turnout, according to this, as minus 1.9 to last time.
They actually
well,
lost
that was
votes.
the Brexit Party last time.
Yes.
They got 3,000 on the Brexit
It would
Party.
be an equivalent sort of voter block, I imagine.
Yeah.
Which is extremely disappointing. I mean, this is where we should dwell on the fact of what the hell Reform? I'm sorry, it's embarrassing that your main opponent, the right-wing government, is so unbelievably unpopular, and this is where you sit in a place like this.
Hi folks, sorry to interrupt the video, but I wanted to let you know that we've introduced a feature on the website that allows you to purchase individual videos. So if you go over to lotus.com and see a piece of premium content that you really want to watch, you can pay for it, and it is yours forever.
Now, we have some insight into why this is so bad, which is this guy, the candidate himself, is just awful.
Well,
I don't know what they were thinking.
Him and Galloway are the only one with clickable names on Wikipedia.
Yeah, the rest of them...
Both of them are for not good reasons.
Oh, okay. I'm not too familiar with this guy.
So, I mean, George is there because of his long history, which was something we sort of just went through.
Well, yeah.
That. Now, this is the Reform candidate. Now, he used to be a Labour MP, so that's why
great.
he was picked. He used to be the Rochdale Labour MP. So the people at Reform, whoever's pulling the strings at the top, made this decision, and from a management leader perspective.
I've just seen why he was suspended from the party.
Yes, he was suspended from the party in 2015 after it emerged that he had exchanged explicit messages with a 17-year-old girl.
Reform, what the hell?
This was then, I think, is the case that it was overturned. So he's not guilty of this crime. It wasn't taken all that way. He's not been found guilty of that. If for no other than legal reasons, we should lay that out. So there's that. But why? Just why? Pick Nigel Farage, pick anyone, literally, who cares?
Well, Reform have been on a spree of shooting themselves in the foot. Not only are they fielding this ex-Labour guy who has a questionable history, but didn't they turn down 2 Conservative Party defectors recently that are actually in Parliament at the minute that could buy them some influence? And it's like, no.
They've also had people throwing excellent campaign posters at them saying, here, run with this, and then not doing it.
It's really weird. I don't know what's going on with the leadership of Reform, but it's not effective, if nothing else. I mean, even if we take this in its singularity, you lost a percentage of the vote and votes. It's not good. Bad news. So really need to take that on board for those guys. But there we are. The big story being, the right wing could actually even win in a place like Rochdale. I mean, for Christ's sake, the only reason you know it is because of the grooming gangs. But we don't, because people aren't turning up to vote because of just depression with the options.
It is also worth mentioning as well that by-elections tend to have a lower turnout, but even amongst the actual turnout, it seems like the right, as you say, have just stayed at home.
There's another interesting fact in this, because, of course, as you can see, George Galloway's strategy is to run on a communist basis, or socialist, and mix that with international Islam. So his main voting bloc, his massive strategy was to get the Muslims on side and get out and vote for me, and I will win because they have such massive in-group preference that they will just stick together.
I'm sure we'll go over it, but from what I've seen from online, he was campaigning very, very hard on the Gaza issue, and also seemed to have two separate campaign tactics that he was going by. Communism for thee, Islamism for thee also.
Yes, we will. And I just want to mention the mathematics here real quick, because it's just really weird. So we did some digging and tried to estimate these. So there's about 22,000 Muslim votes in this constituency of about 75,000 people, something like that. And even then, George Galloway only got 12,000 votes. They're not all going to be Muslims. A lot of them are going to be leftists who left the Labour Party because, in their words, it's a Zionist party now. Even when they run Azhar Ali. Okay, sure. So let's keep that there. So let's go and check out what he was up to, because you're quite right. This is the meat of the issue. Well, this is his opposition. This is the Labour candidate, that Afzal from earlier. This is him speaking in foreign.
Oh, yeah, he had an interpreter, didn't he?
He was talking in an Urdu or something. Who cares?
Didn't he get suspended from the Labour Party and he ran under Labour anyway as well?
Yeah. He was then kicked out because he did some anti-Israel stuff in his statements. And
who'd have thought?
Yeah, this was interpreted as anti-Semitic, so the party kicked him out because we're trying to get rid of that Corbyn stench. And
he went, screw you, I'm staying anyway.
And they didn't kick him out of the party properly because he's still their candidate, so there's that. But even with that, even with a foreign guy with a foreign name, speaking foreign, talking about how he hates Israel, destroyed, utterly destroyed by George Galloway. I mean, losing, what was it, 40% of the vote there in that position. That's mad. Massive.
Well, there's a lot to be said for charisma and powerful rhetoric. Mm-hmm. And from what I can tell from this guy, is not exactly jumping out the screen, grabbing my attention.
I think also the party leader has a very important effect on how people vote in British elections. And the fact that Keir Starmer has connections to the Jewish world might put off Muslims.
Well, you mean his wife?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wife and kids.
Yes.
And you're not joking, because we're now going to go through George Galloway's leaflets, which, oh God. So this is the first one here, which he writes, of course, to the people of Rochdale about the important local matters, such as Gaza. The people of Gaza don't have a vote in this election. You do. Okay, good tagline. This election is a straight choice between George, who will fight for Palestine, and the people of Rochdale. They're second, though. And Keir Starmer, who will fight for Israel. And you're right to point out, a lot of the local chatter and a lot of the WhatsApp group chats in these places keep getting leaked that they're just like, did you know he's got a Jewish wife? And that's about it. That's about all it takes for converting.
Why does it have to be that this is the issue that all of British politics now revolves around?
The Israel-Gaza stuff should be none of our business.
Well,
we're not involved in any way, shape or form. It's only the imported foreigners that care, and leftists who may as well be foreigners.
Well, that's the thing, because if you're a nationalist, you care about your own issues, your own future, your self-determination, things like this. Not foreign self-determination.
You don't even have to be an explicit nationalist. You just need to be a normal person. It's like, well...
Well, a normal person is a nationalist.
Well, all of these people that he's appealing to are nationalists of one form or another. At least they recognize that they belong to a particular group whose interests are being catered to when they receive this leaflet through the door.
Because that's the thing. You can trust foreigners to actually do the right thing, but for their own people.
Crop that.
So, this is true. If you go and play Rome Total War and you get one of the diplomats, one of the traits they get is foreign diplomat, word for word. That's where I stole that phrase. So there we are. Getting to those two leaflets, though, that you mentioned. This is evil genius. This is where I'm just like, this is the Grindset. This motherfucker, grinding is all he's been doing. And I can't even hate the player at this point, I'll be honest, even though disagree on the politics. So look at this. This is the letter he sent out to English constituents. George Galloway for Rochdale. I, first and foremost, believe in Britain. He's capitalized as bold in the parts.
I believe in family. I believe in men and women. God created everything in pairs. I have no difficulty in defining what a woman is. You know what? This guy's kind of jumping out at me. Finally, we're returning to sensible politics.
This bit's important. I believe in law and order. And he goes on to say, and I will expose the cover-up of crime. There will be no grooming gangs on my watch, even if I have to arrest them myself.
I want to see that. I want to see gentleman George Galloway jumping out in costume, fighting crime personally.
I don't know what his hat's called. It's got a specific name, but I want to see him like.
Is it a trilby he's wearing?
I think it's a trilby, but yeah, just he'll be there like a 1950s detective.
Yeah, I'm on the case with a
Posing-
magnifying glass.
Posing as a young child to catch out the room.
God. But he goes on to say,
Aha, it was me all along.
was me, George Galloway.
but this is how he's selling himself, right? So he goes on to say, I will fight for small business. And then he goes on to say, the above goals are reopen the maternity at A&E, local staff, open air market, just like Bury. Secure the long-term future of Rochdale AFC. Bring back big names to our town centre like Primark. Oh, God, it's that bad, is it?
True communist.
And then the end of it, make Rochdale great again.
Based. That's,
Right.
This would be the most. Imagine that you've been living in Rochdale and you've been like all you've been getting through the post. You're an Englishman. All you've been getting is the Conservatives saying we will fight for Israel, and then you get through the Labour also saying we will fight for. And then you get this guy coming through like make Rochdale great again. Brilliant. It would be a breath of fresh air coming through your post box, wouldn't it?
Because remember, most people are normies. That's where that term comes from,
Yeah. But then,
if you were a Muslim member of Rochdale, you didn't get this leaflet because you would just crumple that up. You got a different leaflet from George, which begins as follows: Assalamu alaikum.
That's such a natural phrase coming from you, Callum.
To the voters of the Muslim faith in Rochdale, the last 130 days have been a shock to the Ummah to its core. The killing of thousands of brothers and sisters,
Our
brothers and sisters in Gaza is a war crime and must be held to account. Oh, we're off to a good start then, aren't we? We'll get on to the bolden bits.
I get the impression he's not going to mention the grooming gangs because I imagine that would be they might lose some votes. That's their favourite pastime up that way. Isn't it?
Hey Mo, he's talking about you.
George Galloway has fought for Muslims at home and abroad all my life and paid the price. It goes on to list here Iraq and whatnot. If the Labour Party lose this by-election, Sir Keir Starmer could well be forced out as Labour leader. Get rid of that Jew-loving. Keir Starmer is a top supporter of Israel. Get him out. With your support on Thursday the 29th, and if God wills it...
I'm surprised he said God.
Inshallah, brothers, I will give 200 remaining days in Parliament to the service to the people of Rochdale as your MP. Great. You have a unique opportunity to send Keir Starmer and the Labour Party a message. Stop supporting genocide, stop supporting Israeli aggression, and stand with Palestine. Together, we can send a message that is going to be heard from all four corners of the world. From northwest of England to Palestine.
That famous alliance.
Wassalamu alaikum, George Galloway.
That's amazing. This, honestly, like you say, this is the Grindset. This is...
That's the grind.
If you're in a multi-ethnic constituency in a multi-ethnic society, at this point, this is good politics.
He's playing both sides so he can come out on top.
Yes. I mean, what else do you do? If you can't play for just one side, play all of them at the same time.
Honestly, George, if you're watching, I'm not trying to be rude. We disagree on everything, but hats off, particularly yours. But just, good Lord, man. Like, I am impressed. And there's some real subtle things I didn't pick up on until after as well. Now, what do you notice? Can we please spot the difference?
Can I just point out something as well? This person who's posted this in the first place, sad, Union Jack in the handle. Somebody responds, appeasement politics of the worst kind starts now with Rochdale. His response, what do you know about British politics? Yeah. I mean, this is British politics now, isn't it? You go, on one side, I am a racist. On the other side, inshallah, brothers.
I'd vote for that. So anyway, you can see here, what's the difference? Sincerely, boys, can you please spot the difference? Have you noticed what's not there?
Well, this is the easiest case of spot the difference I've ever seen.
No, it's
everything.
Not. No, it's not. What's the difference? Come on.
There's a signature on the one with
his name
that's for the Muslims, and there's not on the one for the white people. That's part of it.
More obvious. This.
Oh, yes.
See this? On the Muslim one, he literally drew what you have to vote for.
Oh, just in case.
Just in case. For some reason. So there we are.
I did wonder what that was.
Someone made that graphic design decision, presumably. So there we are.
He must have signed off on it, because he must have signed off, one for the whites, one for the browns, why not?
Yeah, it worked.
Why is there a cog on it? I've never seen that in a ballot box.
That's his party logo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, workers.
Well, quickly in this off, we've just Reform are quite upset, obviously. Now, Richard Tice here, he's got some sincere complaints that are true. I'm not trying to be dunking on him. I'm just saying you've done a very poor performance in terms of leadership, and this is another one there where it hasn't worked. That's just tough love. and you'll know that yourself. But you can see here, he mentions that this wasn't really a fair race. There's a lot of things that went badly wrong for this to be a free and fair election. And he mentions here that they were subjected to death threats, true. Suffered racist vile abuse, true, for being their candidate being a white man. They didn't attack him for grooming girls, allegedly. They weren't interested in that. That wasn't a point of attack. It was instead, you white devil, was the phrase used. Bin refused entry to the hustings. That was true. That happened to him, and they kicked him off being a white man. Had to be relocated for his own safety, the team there. That's true. Suffered daily intimidation and slurs. Great. Yeah, that's British elections. That's fantastic.
Isn't British democracy just wonderful, isn't it?
He goes on to say, in one incident, Reform UK business supporters were threatened with firebombs if they distributed our leaflets. Menacing behaviour was a feature of the entire campaign, including outside polling stations on the day of the election itself. The ugliest of contests, we are also concerned about the sudden increase in the postal votes, which jumped from 14,000 postal votes to 23,000 postal votes in a constituency which has less people voting than last time.
One has to wonder, don't they? I mean,
this is the root cause of every vote rigging case we have in Britain. That's proven as well, YouTube.
I'd be impressed if a relatively independent party like Galloway's were able to conduct such fortification. But then again, if he does have people on his side...
So the two cases we know of are Birmingham and Tower Hamlets. Now, what did Birmingham and Tower Hamlets have in common? Who knows? But both of them turned up with literally carrier bags full of votes that they'd printed at home and then were convicted of doing that. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Anyway, I'll just end this off real quick. Yeah, some more complaining here about some suspicions, but that's nothing more than suspicions at this current moment.
We at least know that guy turned out.
Yeah, he did. But this, the response to this is interesting, if nothing else. I suppose is where I'll end it off, because, man, hell of an event. Don't know what he's going to do with that power. I respect the Grindset. Disagree on literally everything, probably. It'd be interesting to talk to him if we could at some point, because I just want to be like, how do you sleep at night? But yeah, if the right literally came out to vote, they could have easily won. We're not even talking about the mass public coming out, just the people who voted in 2019 for one party, they could have won. So it's actually not over, boys. It is the case that the establishment has lost. They are over. But the rise of something else isn't out of the question. I'll end this off with just a good meme, because it's me.
Yep.
There we are. 2468, Northern English Caliphate. So there we are. That's what we'll be seeing in Parliament.
It's going to be the new national anthem soon enough.
Inshallah. If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Symposium series, this episode on the evil side of welfare. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.